Okay, welcome on board, everybody. You are logging into our webinar. So just 1 minute to log into it, and we'll be starting soon. In the meantime, get familiar with the chat box, please. And if you are so kind, can you just tell us where you're from? I'm opening the chat box, and right, what I get is Prague today with us here, right? And Romania, any Sydney, Argentina, Vietnam, Pakistan, Macedonia. Right, great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. Great. So this is Latvia and France. I can see here, Nepal. So we have people from all over the world. So it's very nice to have you all in my webinar. My name is Kamil Petrick. I'm going to talk today about writing challenges in the context of PTE Academic. Together with us, there is Sophia behind the scenes. So she is going to answer any questions you might have about admin stuff, right? So if you have any questions, you can type them into the Q&A box. Right, okay, so you know the two crucial boxes, chat and Q&A, right? So please use this chat box to, stay in touch with me throughout this webinar. If there is any question you'd like to be answered, put that into the Q&A box, and I'll be addressing questions from the Q&A box after the webinar. Great. So let's start, and the topic is writing challenges. And the first question from me, if you could use the chat box, what would you say the biggest writing challenges for our students, especially in the context of academic English or PTE Academic? What would you say? I'm just looking at the chat box. What your ideas are for task achievement. Thank you, Bea. Right. And other expected structures, knowing expected structures, grammatical errors, structuring, connecting ideas, time management, right? Understanding English academic writing culture. Right. Flow of the writing, great. And flow again, consistent style, lexical resources, so vocabulary. So these are actually the most of the things that you raised here are actually the issues that we're going to have a look at. So let's look at academic PT Academic writing challenges. I wanted to focus on 4 of them, and these are, let me just go through different windows, because I have a lot of windows open in my screen, especially the chat box is crucial, so I need to keep it up. So the first writing challenge that we're going to have a look is mentioned by some of you, coming up with relevant, sufficient ideas, presented effectively and coherently. Then we'll have a look at another challenge, synthesizing, right? Because this is what is happening in PT Academic, synthesizing information coherently, accurately, within a word limit. That is very important in exam conditions. And another challenge that we'll cover is demonstrating a wide range of vocabulary and grammar, things mentioned by you in the chat box. Using correct spelling and punctuation, and last but not least would be managing time effectively, to plan, write, review within the allocated time. Again, the time factor is crucial for exam conditions, and this is also something that you mentioned. So let's have a look at this first challenge. Let's embrace the first challenge. And this first challenge, as you might remember, students might find it challenging to come up with relevant and sufficient ideas that will be organized coherently and effectively. And I'd like to, throughout this webinar today, I'd like to look at some particular tasks in PTE Academic. And well, this challenge will be especially visible in, well, the classic writing task in PTE Academic, which is write essay. For those of you who are new to PTE Academic, that's a task in which students have to write a 200 to 300 word essay on a given topic. Typically, it's an argumentative or persuasive essay. The topic is given, and they have to write 200 to 300 words. The way it is scored, the scoring is for write an essay task is based on some traits. So that would be form, which is basically the length actually of this essay, vocabulary, grammar, spelling, content, general linguistic range, development, structure, and coherence. And the last three are those that I'd like to focus a little bit more on. Because the first four are kind of quite obvious what kind of traits these are, but let's have a look at these three: content, general linguistic range, and development, structure, and coherence. So let's start with content. Can you use the chat box to share your ideas? What actually are the elements of content that are assessed? How? What would you say when you say content is the scored trait? So what specifically is scored? What specifically is assessed here? So let me have a look at the chat box if you have any ideas. So what is content? What kind of ideas related to topic? Thank you for Shankar. Making sure if all the questions are answered or not, right? Exactly. Great. If the answer corresponds with what has been put in the prompt, key phrases related to main topic. Right, so understanding the prompt, most of your ideas are right, exactly. Content, the algorithm will assess or will check if all aspects of the topic have been addressed. So you mentioned key points. If arguments are supported with details, examples, explanations. So these are the elements of content. Then development, structure, and coherence. What is your idea? What will be assessed here in this trait? Elaborating the ideas in proper way, like answering how and why. So that's especially content. But what about development, structure, and coherence? Consistency in the idea. Okay, from Neha. Multiple paragraphs. Paragraphs will be an important element here in this scoring trait. Okay. Syntax. Right, definitely. Development, how the essay is progressing. Exactly. So the elements assessed here is logical organization pattern. Then if there is any clear introduction, body, and conclusion. Whether the ideas are connected. There is some flow of ideas. Some of you mentioned that. And also if there are transitions between paragraphs also mentioned. So these are the elements that are scored under this trait called development, structure, and coherence. And the last out of the three that I'd like to discuss in depth, general linguistic range. That's a trait that is scored in write essay task. And what would you say, general linguistic range? What are your ideas there? Sentences are correct or not? Broad vocabulary. Sentence structure. I mean, correct sentence structure, I suppose, language in very general sense. So definitely these are the elements that are scored here and assessed by the algorithm. So is the language, or does the language precisely convey the ideas? Or are there clear descriptions? Is there no ambiguity in what is being written? Are some subtleties in meaning expressed in the text? And any stylistic features used to communicate meaning. So these are the elements of so-called general linguistic range. So these are the scores, the traits that are scored in write essay task. Let's have a look at, well, bearing it all in mind, let's have a look at some strategies that we could, well, suggest, or we could teach, or we could develop in our students. Some strategies that will help our students go through the write essay task, well, pretty smoothly. First of all, this is important to show them, to teach them how to identify the requirements of the topic, the requirements of the essay, what the requirements are. Are they supposed to agree, disagree, or argue for or against, or respond to a question? Show them by analyzing different topics from question bank, for example, how they can identify what is actually the key requirement in the essay, and they have to identify that, because otherwise they might fail, especially the contents trait. Another strategy that is important for essays, and that's, well, our task to teach them, that is being able to produce some strong sentences, especially strong opening sentence, or one strong sentence to sum up the main argument, strong sentence to close the essay. When I say strong, I mean some kind of catchy, some sentence that turns attention, that is somehow standing out of the essay, and that catches the reader's attention. So these would be crucial elements that will help the readers to go through the essays, and this will be also assessed, especially in this general linguistic range. Planning and taking notes. Students tend to forget that, but planning is an absolutely crucial element of writing essay, and they should spend some time on planning and teach them that. Like the essay, they have 20 minutes to write the essay. I would say I advise my students to spend 50–60% of the time writing only. The rest of it should be devoted to planning, like 30% of the time, and reviewing the test, which is, well, more or less 20% of the time. So planning, show them the importance of this element, and, well, while planning, taking notes might be very helpful. Obviously, they're writing under timed conditions, so they have to keep track of the time. So that's our task, the teacher's task, to provide as much as possible writing activity under timed conditions, so that they realize what it means that there are 20 minutes to write an essay. So help them in that, keeping track and being aware of the time and how much time they have. And I mentioned planning and reviewing also. Another important element, students tend to forget that. Show them the importance of reviewing, like devoting 20%, around 20% of the time to really read through the text, check if it, well, reads smoothly, if there are any grammatical errors, vocabulary, spelling, all those elements. They will need some time. Teach them that. And teach them also, another strategy is that no matter what your opinion is, I mean, your opinion, because in most cases they will have to somehow express their opinion, because they will have to argue for or persuade the reader. So no matter what their opinion is, they should argue this opinion clearly with supporting information. This is what I very often tell my students in my first class, right? We're here to practice or to learn some tool, and it doesn't really matter that much what you think. It does matter how you inform about what you think. So here, when it comes to essay writing, well, why don't you tell your students to express their, for example, argue for the opinion that is not the real opinion, but the opinion that is easier to be argued for example, right? It doesn't really matter what the opinion is. What matters is that the opinion is argued for clearly and with supporting information. And spell checkers these days, what I notice is that students are used to spell checkers because they type a lot. If they type in English, for example, emails, they are used to being kind of automatically corrected by spell checkers, which is obviously not the case in the essay writing. So another task, right? Teach your students to write without spell checkers, right? So if they type, try to convince them to turn off the spell checker, for example, to see how well they can do that. It's becoming more and more popular that students somehow simply don't care to be careful about the spelling because, well, they always have the spell checker. And a few activities to help you work with those strategies that I mentioned. And the first activity that I would suggest, I like using for any writing activities, I like using some funny phrases. There is a website called scarymummy.com where you can find a lot of nice funny phrases that look like that, right? So that you can see what I mean. Like, for example, every rule has an exception. This rule is no exception, for example, right? So if you Google funny phrases, you'll find a lot of them online. And before I tell you my idea how I like working with those phrases, what would be your idea, right? How can you use phrases like that, right? So as you can see, for example, television is a medium, anything well done is rare. The road to success is always under construction. The leading source of computer problems is computer solutions. An idea is how you would use to, practice some writing with your students. Let me have a look at the chat box. Do more and be more, right? Okay, so that's an idea for okay, for example, so introduction to provide general statements. So these phrases could be used as for example, first sentence of your essay and continue that, or topic of your essay. That's the most obvious way we could use phrases like that. What I like doing with phrases like that is maybe a little bit different, because I ask my students sometimes to write a short essay with the sentence actually hidden in it. So I give one sentence to every student, for example, right? This is a hidden sentence. They can't show this sentence to anybody. And the task is, for example, for homework, or if I want to practice under timed conditions, I do it in class. They have to write an essay. I give a topic, or I let them choose a topic, and they have to hide a sentence like that in this essay. Well, I give a time limit, practicing timed conditions, as I mentioned. And then they exchange a text, and the other student is trying to find the hidden sentence, to guess the hidden sentence. And they get a point, or they win if they find it, or they lose if they can't find it. The idea behind it is that if you want to hide sentences like that in your essay, you have to produce some more catchy phrases like this. So that will provoke them to produce those strong sentences that I mentioned, the strong opening sentence, closing sentence, a strong sentence that kind of sums up the main topic of the essay. So, and that's, well, some additional motivation, because in writing essay tasks, this is the motivation is the biggest problem, because, you know, writing 200 or 300 words is kind of discouraging for many students these days. They're not used to writing long text that much. So this is additional, well, motivation. This is a little bit more competitive for them to hide those sentences. And another task that I would suggest to help them to work on some coherence in what they write, to help them write coherently. What you have to do, you have to prepare 5 separate sheets with opening sentences for paragraphs, right? It doesn't have to be introductory paragraph. It could be any one of the paragraphs in an essay. So just an opening sentence for a paragraph, and you prepare 5 cards with transitional phrases. Each student gets a card with the same set of 5, let's say, transitional phrases. And now each student, the students work in groups of 5, and they sit in a circle. That would be the most convenient way to put them in a circle if possible. And each student gets 1 opening sentence. So each student, there is a group of 5 students, and each student in the group gets 1 separate opening sentence. So we have kind of 5 paragraphs in a group. Each student is holding a separate opening sentence for a separate paragraph, and the task is that they have to use one of the transitional phrases from the card to continue the paragraph, to write to another sentence within the same paragraph. So, for example, let's have a look here. So can you continue this paragraph that you can see in the screen with the word subsequently? And ideas, right? If you were to use the word subsequently, okay, thank you, Norma, for your question about the hidden sentence. I will get back to this hidden sentence in a moment. Just let me ask if you have any an idea how, well, just how you could continue. You have this opening sentence, and how can you continue the word subsequently? All right. All right, thank you. Faisal, as if I'm pronouncing the name properly. Subsequently, life is now lived faster than we did 20 years ago, right? Something like that, right? So this is what they have to do. Or my idea is, for example, subsequently, the integration of technology into every phase of our daily lives has become, okay, Carlos also answered here. Subsequently, we as teacher must get familiarized with the latest trends in IT. Great. And so it goes, right, in the circle. So they pass on the sentences to another person, and this way, one by one, obviously they cross out the transitional phrase. They cannot use this transitional phrase anymore, and they pass on this. The sheets circulate in the group, and this way they create a paragraph with those transitional phrases that you're interested in, that you want to practice, that you have given them. And after that, you can look at the paragraphs, analyze if they have used the transitional phrases properly, so they can practice coherence through the transitional phrases. Coming back to question from Norma about the hidden phrases, the idea here is, I'm just moving back, the idea here is that each student gets a sentence. For example, a student gets a sentence, for example, television is a medium and anything well done is rare. And the task for the student, and you give them the topic, for example, right, discuss the role of mass media, old mass media in the contemporary society. And the task for the student is to write a short essay in which they will have to hide this sentence, this specific sentence. Television is a medium, anything well done is rare. They write down the essay, and then they exchange the essays, and the other student is reading this essay, and the other student's task is to guess which sentence has been actually given by the teacher, right? Which is the hidden sentence that this student was supposed to hide in the essay. And this, well, gives the motivation, as I said, to write and to compete a little bit. By the way, I mentioned previously in my previous webinar that you will be provided with a PDF document with activities from the webinars, so that you will be able to get to some activities that were presented in the webinars devoted to different skills. Right, let me move on to another, well, activity, maybe not an activity, but I would suggest showing a student some online AI tools that will help them rate the writing. This is obviously something completely different. What I'm going to show now is something completely different from the tools used by PTE Academic, but these are nice free, there are a lot of nice free online tools that can help the students to well, rate what they have written. And for example, if you look at this short paragraph here that in the screen, how would you rate the academic vocabulary in it, right? Is it poor, is it average, or is it good? What would you say? Just take a quick look at that, and what would you say? Okay, I can see, Norma, that it's clear, this hidden sentence. I'm really happy. Thank you, Norma, for giving me some feedback. Okay. Right, so I got some answers. Most of you say average as far as academic vocabulary is concerned. And for example, if you go to, there is this website, paperrater.com, which is one that I like, but there are hundreds of them. If you just Google online AI writing rating tools, then you will get a lot of tools like that. And well, you with PaperRater you can get some reports on what you write, showing how for example, how good this academic vocabulary here is. And as you can see, this is well, this has been rated as a very poor academic rating, academic vocabulary here in this text. What about transitional phrases? How would you rate transitional phrases? Again, poor, average, or good? Transitional phrases. Good. Poor, right. Okay, so human rating is always quite diverse. It all depends on a lot of elements here. But when you look at the report I got from the PaperRater, here actually well, it says it's a relatively good job, right? So there are some transitional phrases here used above average. You may still benefit from reading some information, some extra feedback. So so this I would suggest showing students tools like that because, well, you achieve a few goals with that. First, well, students get used to generally being assessed by AI. They can see the process of being assessed by AI, which is the case in the PTE Academic. Well, they can do a lot of rating on their own, right? So they can check a lot of text. They don't ask you for feedback all the time. And last but not least, what I have noticed is that once I show my students tools like that, I feel somehow obliged or motivated to really take care of the feedback I'm giving them to what they write, because well, as a human rater, I want to, well, give them a little bit more than the machines. So this is somehow also motivating for me. So tools like that could be a great completion to your writing classes, and they can be a great help when preparing them for PTE Academic. Also, as I said, the tools used by PTE Academic are completely different tools than those available for free online. Okay. Let's move on to challenge number 2. Students might find it difficult to synthesize information coherently and accurately within a word limit. That would be especially, this challenge would be especially visible in those summarizing tasks. You probably know that there are 2 summary tasks. The first task is summarize written text, where they have to, reading a text, they have to write a 1-sentence summary of the passage. And the traits here are form, which is obviously focusing on the length, right? They have to write between 5 and 75 words, 1 sentence, and they cannot write any longer or shorter text than that. Otherwise, they will be scored 0. Vocabulary, grammar, and content are the scored traits in this task. And for this task, some strategies, some important elements to teach them. Well, skimming and scanning that we discussed when we discussed reading, because, well, that's a partially reading task, obviously. So there will be a little bit of reading involved here. So teaching your students skimming and scanning would be crucial. And when they can do that, they will be able to take notes of the main idea, supporting ideas. They will use some keywords in the notes or symbols to show the ideas or how the ideas are organized. So taking notes would be an important skill here to be taught. We talked a little bit previously in the previous session devoted to listening on taking notes. So this is something that well, you should spend some time with the students getting them ready for this task. This task, in this task, they have to write 1 sentence that will be a complex sentence. So revising main and subordinate clauses, using of conjunctions. These elements will allow them to include a lot of elements. And this is, well, the task for teachers to go through those elements. And review, right? Saving some time for review is an important element, right? So they have to be taught to take some time to check it. They cannot write more than 75 words, 1 complete sentence. Main and supporting ideas should be included in it. And a task to help you work towards this right summary. You can bring to class a number of 100 paragraphs. Could be also generated by some AI tools if you can't find many relatively short paragraphs, but you need a collection of around 100-word paragraphs, and each student should get 1 paragraph from you in your group. And each student should select 15 to 20 most important words from the text and take them down. That's also preparation for taking notes, like taking note of the keywords in the text. And then they sit in groups of 3 or 4 people, and they show the words to the group. And the idea is that the group recreate the content of the paragraph, right? So based on some 15, 20 key words or key ideas, they have to recreate the content, the main ideas and the supporting ideas from the whole paragraph. What about that? Could you suggest, if I show you the first sentence here, could you suggest 5 words that would be the most important words to take down from this sentence, so that later on somebody will be able to recreate the content of the sentence and ideas? So use the chat box, please. Okay, technology, proliferation, permeated, revolutionizing, okay. Digital technology again, access, conduct. So there are some, there are obviously, okay, great, fantastic. Thank you for your feedback. So as you can see, Well, it's not an easy task to select just 5. We could say there are many more, but we have to carefully select those that will convey the main topic or the main content of the sentence. And this way they learn how to select, right, what to focus on, what words bear the main message, right, and which words will be helpful to recreate the main message of the sentence. So that's a task that will get them ready for writing a summary. Another summary task is summarize spoken text. So this is a task they will listen to a recording and then they write a short summary of the recording. And obviously the same traits are scored here. This is form, namely the length of the summary, vocabulary, grammar, content, and spelling is also an important element because they listen to a text, so they show if they can spell the words from the text correctly. And some strategies here will be, well, a lot of strategies will be similar to write a summary of a written text, but here taking notes would be crucial, right? Again, we talked a lot about notes previously, so teaching them to take notes while listening, again, getting the key ideas, using symbols, using abbreviations. These will be the techniques that will be crucial for strategies. So teach them to take note of any new terms, definition, facts, statistics, things that will be difficult to remember and that will help them to well, recreate the main message of the talk. And also teach them to shorten, simplify, paraphrase, synthesize the information from this listening. Some, again, some overview sentence to introduce the summary is an important element, just to open the summary. Here they don't have to write just one sentence. And review, right, again, an important element, planning and saving the time to go through the summary. And the word counter is an important element here. They have to write within the given limit, and they cannot exceed because they lose on the form trait, scored trait. And an activity here to help you work with some skills necessary for writing a summary of a listened or spoken text. You display a grid on a whiteboard or some blackboard that you have in class, and you play a recording or read out a passage. And together with the students, you complete the grid, right? So you show them what the main idea is, what some key details are, some supporting details, some conclusion in what they hear. So you show them that this structure, that they can find this kind of structure in any kind of talk that is played in PTE Academic. And then they write a summaries based on the grid. So they actually learn how to find the structure, how to complete this. By completing this grid, they will be ready for writing a summary of a spoken text. And challenge number 3 that we mentioned at the beginning: students might find it difficult to demonstrate a wide range of vocabulary, grammar, using correct spelling and punctuation. Some of you mentioned this, like vocabulary range, grammar range, and accuracy of vocabulary and grammar, also spelling, punctuation. These are the most obvious elements of writing. And here I'd like to focus a little bit on dictation. This is the last task in which is listening and writing, actually. But this element of writing in this task, in it they have to show a lot of good command of especially spelling, but also vocabulary, but also grammar, as you will see in a moment. So that dictation, the task is very, well, I would say simplistic. So they listen to a sentence or a phrase and they have to write down the sentence or the short phrase. And the scoring is simple. This is partial credit. They get a credit for each word that is spelled correctly in it. And some strategies for this, obviously, as I said, it's partially listening, right? So they have to show some listening skills. But when it comes to the writing elements in dictation, what is important, they have to decide in advance which is better for them. Is it writing by hand or typing, right? The faster method, the better. So they have to decide in advance, because there will be this notepad that they will be provided with in the exam. And if they feel better writing by hand, yes, they have to decide in advance, because they have to be ready when it starts. So, well, let them check which they are. So practice some dictation for with your students, just for them to check which they are better with, writing by hand or typing. Obviously, they have to get ready, so place the cursor in the response box, or just take the notepad and get the pen ready. So this is clear, and show them that when working with dictation, this is important that they focus especially on key content words, because this will be the main focus. If they don't manage to take down everything while listening, the content, the keywords will help them to recreate the content of the whole sentence. As obviously they should use abbreviations, symbols where possible, and also teach your students to ignore spelling in the dictation, right? That sounds a little bit strange, ignore spelling, while spelling is so important, because they can get points for each correctly spelled word. But obviously there will be some time to correct the spelling. So if there's no time to think how this word is spelled, no, they just write down this word as they hear it, and they spell it as they can, and then they reread and correct mistakes. So that's a very important technique for dictation. And also work with your students on some words, low frequency words, some new words, to show them how they can guess, because there's a lot of regularity actually when you look at it. There's a lot of regularity in English spelling, so you can show them how they can spell words that they hear, for example, for the first time, how they can guess spelling, and give them some hints on that. Some ideas for activities when it comes to dictation. There's this activity that is sometimes called Dictogloss. That's a nice activity in which they learn to focus on the key words, on the content words, and then recreate the rest of the sentence. You just read or play a short, dense text at normal speed. You can take a text from your textbook, for example, you're using. And as it is being read or played, students jot down keywords or phrases. Because this is a dense and it's a long text, they are not able to write every single word. So they just focus on jotting down keywords or phrases, and the text is played only once or read only once, and then in small groups they pull the words and they reconstruct the version of the text. And the winning team, you can make it a competitive task. The winning team will have the most accurate transcript of the text. So this way they learn how to how to recreate, how not to focus on the spelling because there's no time for that, how they can then complete a text based on some knowledge of grammar, knowledge of vocabulary, knowledge of some fixed phrases, for example. So that's a nice activity that will help them work towards dictation. Another activity that I would suggest, and here they will work with some academic vocabulary. You can Google commonly misspelled words in academic English, for example, and you will get a list like that. You can see this on the right. And you can work with this list, study the words with students, show them those spelling problems that might appear, show them some regularities that, for example, E and open syllables will be very often spelled with double letter E, like in the word committee, for example, number 11. So show them some irregularities, or show them some problems in spelling, work with a list like that, for example, 20 words. And then Students work in pairs. You ask each student to write a 100-word text. Again, under timed condition would be a good idea because we are getting used to timed condition towards the exam. And this text should contain 10 words from the list. You can give them the topic of this text, for example. The idea is that it should contain 10 words from the list, and some words have to be deliberately misspelled because they will have to exchange the text, and the idea would be obviously to guess the misspelled words without consulting any dictionary and a list of words, right, just from the memory, right? So this way they practice some low frequency academic English words that are very often misspelled. That will be a great tool for any writing, especially dictation here. And another dictation activity. Okay, sorry. Prepare a bingo card with some low frequency academic words. Again, you can Google some low frequency academic words and you prepare a grid like that, bingo card. Could be 6, could be 8, it's up to you, obviously. And you have to prepare definitions of the words from the list and a few from the grid, and a few definitions of some words not from the list. And you simply read out the definitions, those definitions of the words from the grid, or these additional definitions. And as students recognize the vocabulary that matches the definition, they can mark off that word in the bingo card. And the first student to mark off the entire card shouts bingo. So, well, it works like that, more or less. Let me ask you to listen to a definition and which word is being defined here. So listen to the definition carefully.
Intended for or understood by a small, specialized group.
Okay, so what about which is the... Okay, esoteric, right. Exactly, that's the word. Thank you very much to Farida and Carlos. That's the defined words. And this is how it goes. You read out the definitions and they cross out. You have to add some definitions of some words not from the grid, so that, well, it becomes a little bit more competitive and requires a little bit of concentration. So you work on low frequency words, you work on a little bit of listening as well here, and you work on some spelling here as well. And the last, but not least, the last challenge that we have to embrace, or they have to embrace, our students, they might find it difficult to manage time effectively, to plan, write, and review within the allocated time. As I mentioned, these are very important elements. So it's not only writing in most cases, it's also planning and reviewing. And they have to, well, put it all into the allocated time, or include it all into the allocated time. So what about the strategies here? Obviously, teach them to read carefully the prompt and to comprehend the prompt. I mentioned that in how important it is in writing an essay, that the prompt will tell them what kind of text they are supposed to write. So teach them the importance of focusing on the prompt. That will carry a lot of information here. Show them how to divide writing into sections like planning, introduction, body paragraphs, conclusion, review, in context of essay, or in context of summary writing, where it's also like planning and some structure of the short text or sentence that they have to write as well, and discuss how much time you would allocate. Just as I mentioned, more or less 30% planning, 60% writing itself, and 20% reviewing. This is the advice that I give. Obviously, that might vary. This is up to you, but that would be the suggested allocation of time for each part of this writing process. When it comes to essay, a good idea would be to teach them to start with body paragraphs, actually, because introduction and conclusion, this will be best written as the last ones. As I said, they will require some strong sentences, a little bit of thinking, and that they will have to link with the content of the body. So I always suggest my students that they first start with the body paragraphs. They are typically easy to start with, and then they complete this essay with an introduction and conclusion. That would be a good strategy to go through it. As I mentioned, practicing under timed conditions. So anything you do, any writing in your class, think how you could practice in timed conditions, like how you can set the time limit, and practice typing, right? That's this is a test, PTE Academic. That's a test that they do in front of a computer, and they have to type a lot here. So this typing is a crucial skill. In most cases, students these days type quite well, but if you see that you have a group or some students that are not good at typing, would be good to suggest some tools to practice writing, which I'm going to talk a little bit right now. So there are a lot of online tools for practicing typing. You just, Google typing tools or typing practice, and you will get a lot of or typing activities. You'll get a lot of tools. So show your students the tools. Obviously they will do that all individually, right? So you can't control them, but you can introduce some extra motivation, because most typing websites, they will contain some typing games, right, where you have to, for example, here it's a zombie game where you shoot some zombies by typing letters, typing words on your keyboard. And you can run a typing league, because the students can share the score, for example, in some groups. That would be some extra motivation to engage in some typing activities, because typing fast will help them manage the time in the PTE Academic. And another activity that will help them with time management here would be the activity that actually is good for brainstorming. This moment of planning where you have to brainstorm, when you have to come up with ideas, come up with vocabulary that you will use in essay writing especially. So you can prepare sheets of paper with the alphabet letters on it in a column, and you give students a topic for an essay. And students in groups brainstorm vocabulary that they might use in the essay, and they have to come up with one word for each alphabet letter from the list. So that's kind of brainstorming, planning, and preparing for writing an essay. And the first group to finish are the winners, but it's important that they have to justify the words, right? So why they think this specific word will be good for this topic. Let's see how it works. So you've got this topic here: discuss the impact of social media on interpersonal communication skills. Let's say that's a topic of an essay, and for the topic here, can you suggest some words that will start with F, H, or L? Do I get any answers here? Films, great. 3, okay. Obviously, in a classroom situation, your students, as I said, must be ready to justify why. I'm not asking you here, but why you think that free might be a word that you're going to use here, and then they will have to give you the idea. Alienation, hesitation. Alienation is A, but hesitation, okay. Oh, right. Here with hesitation, I would ask my students to justify that. Hazard, okay. Loneliness, right, kind of obvious word. Linguistic, great. So you have a lot of ideas. Great, fantastic. History, lively, frugal. Okay. So that's an activity in which you practice this this brainstorming and planning, actually, what to write. And when they have the list of words, it's then a little bit easy for them to start writing. So some takeaways, just to finish my webinar, some things that we discussed that I'd like you to well, take away with you. So we discussed the importance of expressing ideas effectively and coherently. So show them and help them to express ideas effectively and coherently. Work with some, for example, transitional phrases. Work with some ideas how to structure the paragraph, or the paragraph and the essay, for example, when it comes to an essay. Show your students some techniques allowing them synthesize information coherently and accurately. So noting keywords, right? Paraphrasing keywords from the text that is being summarized, for example. Another takeaway: show your students the importance of demonstrating a wide range of vocabulary and grammar in PTE Academic. Obviously, that's these are the elements that are scored in most writing tasks here: grammar, vocabulary, not only the accuracy but also the range of those elements. And last but not least, show them that the time management is crucial for especially writing activities. And this time management means well, allocating some time for planning, allocating the time for writing itself, which is obvious, and allocating some time for reviewing, and show them how to divide the time that is spent on writing. What are your takeaways? Let me have a look at the chat box. Are there any takeaways, something that you are taking away with you? Okay, so AI tools, practicing, brainstorming, typing practice, strategies. Great. Thanks a lot for that, spending 30% in planning from Yasmin. All right. I hope you you take something away with you from today. Let me now have a look at some questions from Q&A. There is a question from Sunil: how about using templates in essay? I would be very careful here what a template means, because for some students, template would mean memorizing something, memorizing the text to write as an essay, which is a very, very risky thing. I absolutely wouldn't teach my students to do that, especially that when they memorize and they try to write down the pre-memorized text, they might lose on content. And when they miss the content, as if to say, they get 0 points for any other trait that is scored. So here we have to be very careful. But when it comes to template as some kind of structure, right, that you can share with your students, some how to structure the essay, like, for example, that there is obviously introduction, body, and conclusion, but within the introduction you should, for example, I don't know, retell the topic of the essay, or you should start with some strong sentence that gives the background to the situation, right? Or that you have to present your argument in the introduction, because most typically this will be an introductory, an argumentative essay where you have to argue for or against something. So you present that into introduction. Then when we talk body paragraphs, that there should be a dystopic sentence with the main idea of the paragraph, some supporting information inside, and some concluding sentence. So if we're talking about template like that, the body, I mean, there's the structure of the essay, what it looks like, particular parts, how they should be structured, then yes, this is definitely something for that teachers should equip students with, right? Show them that, as a matter of fact, essays typically are written according to some fixed structure, obviously, as I said, introduction, body, conclusion, but also within each part that there are some important elements that they have to include. And this kind of template, I would say, yes, right, definitely they should know. They should know, if we mean template by that, right, how essays are structured, then that would be a good idea. If the time, then there is a question here, if the time runs out while checking your answer, obviously, well, you have students have, or test takers have 20 minutes when it comes to writing essay. They have 20 minutes to write down, and it automatically closes right after the 20 minutes elapse. So it's obviously submitted if they don't manage to, because the question is if the time runs out while checking the answer. So obviously, if they don't manage to correct some elements in the answer, they will be the essay will be submitted with some non-corrected mistakes, obviously, but still that will be submitted. That will be treated as submitted. And there's a question, I'm just looking at Q&A. Why is writing an essay in a template not penalized? Students who put right using templates are also getting good score, which discourages original creative writing process. It's I mean, again, when it comes to template, I mean the structure, like the classic structure for writing essays. And this is I would say that when it comes to academic writing, well, from my experience with my students, especially those graduate students that I work with, I would say that when they write anything in for their academic purposes, the typical situation is that they have to write it under some rules, right? So there are some rules that, well, for example, you write with some specific language. You do not use, for example, informal structures, informal words, because your professor, who is actually assessing this piece of writing, will not accept it, or will rate it or grade it much lower. Or there must be some clear structure in what you write, so that you can convey ideas effectively, and you can in your academic practice. So as a matter of fact, what you do in academic writing in real life is, I would say, in most cases, structured writing. So in this sense, there is not much place. Obviously, there is some place for creativity, but being creative, inventing some new structure for writing an essay might be a risk in many situations in a university life. So that's why I would say maybe not. I'm not talking template, but I'm talking about some writing according to some structures, or some skeleton that is typical of essays. Yeah, but obviously that would require some longer discussion. Okay, so I can see it's 3:02 Indian time. So we've spent we've spent above an hour together. Thank you very much for being with me here today. That was great. Let me invite you to the sessions that will take place. The session that will take place in September, in which you're going to discuss PTE Academic, and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.